I'd like to propose that we pull 6D. What was in your packet and what you just got this morning is a bunch of smoking regulations which don't cover the issue that we raised.
So what are you saying, we're not ready
areas.
to discuss it?
I am going to give a suggestion back to Susan for the next meeting, which will simply say something to the effect that smoking is prohibited
Well,
on
let's,
town.
now, we're just on agenda stuff. Let's leave it on, and you can raise that issue at
All
that
right.
time, okay?
And I don't know if we need a discussion or how we get somebody working on our ordinances that cover keeping properties in, neat conditions. We do have an issue for some unkempt properties. We have not focused on that for various reasons. We want to make sure that our ordinances allow us to make people maintain their properties.
All right,
Code
I'm
official.
going to put that on under new business, D,
It's probably just assigning it
property
to the-
condition.
What do we call it, code enforcement of?
I don't know, it's not just code enforcement, it's making
standards?
sure our ordinances are strict enough that if we sent somebody out to look, they can say, you're in violation of this
All right,
section.
it's, that's going to be on at 7D. Rich, do you have a comment?
No, the only comment that I have, I think everybody knows that the new administration in Washington has resurfaced the offshore drilling matter. This council, or the previous council, worked on a resolution and did receive a Pelican Award against offshore drilling. And this issue is now back on the table, and I would like for us, it doesn't have to be on the agenda, I don't think it's any emergency, but I would like to have us prepare a resolution for the next meeting. Could be the same resolution we had before. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that we could take a look at it and submit it to the appropriate authorities, to Frank Eiler, Mr. Rabin, and Mr. Tillis, Mr. Burr, and Mr. Rouser.
All right.
I have to remind everybody, too, that the county commissioners supported offshore drilling the last time we had this issue.
We'll put that on as E under 7, and we can discuss it then.
I don't know if it needs an agenda item.
Well, we'll put it there anyway. It's no harm, no foul. Any other comments on the draft agenda? A motion to approve it with those changes?
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have a couple comments on the mayor and council comments and discussions. One, for general information, the state, the legislation dealing with reallocation of the local, I don't know what the right name for it is, the local portion of sales tax has been passed by the House that it was introduced in. Last Thursday was crossover date. If the legislation isn't passed in the House in which it was initiated, it would be dead for this session. But it did pass that House and it went over to the other House. I forget which one it was initiated in. But this is just for general information, that would result in a loss of $58,000 to Sunset Beach and almost 1.3 million, I think it's about 1.3 million dollars to the county of the sales tax to be reallocated someplace else. I have signed a letter generated by mayors to state legislatures voicing our opposition. It was generated by basically the mayors in Brunswick County. The second thing that I had to mention was the status of the Fire District Fee Committee. Once again, this is more for public information because most of the council people are aware of it. The county requested legislation through the legislature to increase the maximum which fire districts would be able to establish in fire district fees. As I understand it, that legislation has been passed by whatever house it was initiated in. It made the crossover date, so that's still live. It hasn't been acted upon. The fire district committee has met and talked and reviewed the numbers and made recommendations to the decision is actually going to be made once, if the legislature raises the limit on the fire district fees. The county commissioners are the ones who actually set the fees. With the local fire district committee has met a couple of times. We went over all of the numbers and whatnot, and I don't want to go into great detail with regard to what that was, but the recommendation, we each voted, and the recommendation of the committee was to increase the fire district fees by 65%, with the objective of being at 65% across the board, because our fire district includes more than just Sunset Beach. It includes places that are not part of this municipality. And we were, through ad valorem taxes, subsidizing the other properties not within the municipality. And we didn't think that was fair, but the 65% figure was arrived upon as a number that would make it revenue neutral, so that Sunset Beach would no longer be subsidizing properties that are not within the town. The system, it's an anomaly. It comes about with two different apples and oranges. The fire fees are based upon square footage. What we're subsidizing it with is based upon property values, and the square footage requirement doesn't relate to what fire requirements are placed on the fire companies today, because the vast majority are not fire calls. They're either EMT calls or assistance or smoke alarms or that type of thing. But at any rate, the committee made the recommendation. I understand that I believe the commissioners, the county commissioners, are meeting on it on the 3rd, and they're going to decide. But it's still all contingent on what the state legislature does. The third thing that I wanted to mention was related to one thing that Rich said was I had received information, I think we all did, about the Beat Oceania activity on Friday. It deals, and I think this needs to be addressed tonight. We can do it later on, but the thing that needs to be addressed is I was requested to speak at it, and I think the council has to take a position. I can't do it because I'm going to be on an airplane someplace, but if the council's going to participate in it, I think the council should make a decision today. So it's on. I put it at the end of new business, so we will. I mean, I think we need to make a decision on it. Okay. Any other comments or discussions?
I have one. I'd like to say thank you to the Old Bridge Preservation Society. They put on an outstanding strawberry and wine festival Sunday at the park. They had good support from the town, staff, and administration. Lots of people in the community came out. Mike's Garage Band did an excellent job. It was a fine example of how the park and activities in the park can show off the best aspects of Sunset Beach. It's a beautiful day. So thank you to all participating.
Any other comments or discussion? All right, it's just about 7 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order, the regular meeting to order, May 1st, 2017, Sunset Beach Town Council. Request everyone join me in pledging allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing with regard to the UDO amendment to Article 6, Section 6.06D, the MB1 Mainland Business District. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is now open for any member of the public to make comment with regard to the proposed changes to the UDO. Any member of the public? None appearing. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item is public comments on agenda items only. If you have, a member of the public has a comment on an agenda item, request you come forward, state your name and address, and try and limit your comments to 3 minutes. It's open for public comments on the agenda. Mr. Nern?
Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. There are several items on the agenda that I had seen mentioned, and I thought it was in the Beacon, so I went through my stuff and I found a letter to the editor from the 20th. And I think maybe y'all can help me understand. I'm just a simple man and I don't get some of this.
Is that microphone on?
I don't know. Yes. How's that?
Just hit it with your finger. It's on, okay.
In this letter to the editor, the writer asked if it's worth spending $2.8 million of tax money proposed by the Riverside Drive development to dredge Jinks Creek. Now, I've talked to a couple town employees, and no one can tell me where this $2.8 million figure comes from. I mean, was it pulled out of the sky? I also asked quite a few people, and no one seems to be able to tell me whether Riverside Drive was the one who proposed this or not. There were, and some of these other figures, like talking about the value of the property and increasing the value of property, it says only 177 homes are affected, but I don't know, that figure seems awfully low to me. These are, I mean, if it's in the Beacon, you know, you think maybe you don't have to check facts if you work at the Beacon.
Well,
But
I don't mean to engage, but you said it was a letter to the editor.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so
And I know,
they have to publish the letter.
uh,
They're not necessarily accepting those facts. The Beacon's not necessarily accepting the facts.
but then they'll write an article about it later and not check the facts. Anyway, these are some of the questions I have, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Other public comment on the agenda? None appearing. We close the public comment on the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving up for discussion concerning dredging conflict of interest.
Concerning,
The conflict of interest in dredging.
let me save Mr. Richardson. I did not put this on the agenda. Mr. Corbett suggested this, I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure. And I'm going to read a statement, and then I'm going to follow it with a motion. Because evidently I'm the one who seems very concerned about this, along with many others. I was taught many years ago never to debate an attorney. Our court dockets are filled with excellent attorneys with different interpretations of the laws. To me, there are two components to this issue: the various North Carolina conflict of interest statutes and exemptions preventing public officials their right to vote. And secondly, the ethical guidelines established by the North Carolina Ethics Commission, which provides examples concerning conflict of interest. I have provided a copy to everyone on this panel. I will read a brief section of the North Carolina Ethics Commission guidelines. The other sections only support this particular paragraph. And this is a quote. Although we each have our own concept of what a conflict of interest is, the Ethics Act has established specific standings that a public service official must follow. These standards list those particular interests that may interfere with the public servant's ability to represent the public's interest. And this is still a quote, official actions that may result in a reasonable, foreseeable financial benefit to the public servant's family or business, including nonprofit, with which the public servant has a relationship. However, putting the Ethics Commission guidelines and the legal complexities aside, it is our personal responsibility to recognize and to avoid even the slightest appearance of any potential conflict of interest issue without seeking the advice of any attorney or published guidelines. This is what our taxpayers...
Excuse me, you're out of the quote now.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I am out of quote.
Okay.
God bless you, Bob. However, putting the Ethics Commission in complex guidelines and the legal complexities aside, it is our personal responsibility to recognize and to avoid even the slightest appearance of any potential conflict of interest without seeking the advice of any attorney or published guidelines. This is what our taxpayers deserve, and this is what they expect. According to the Brunswick County Tax Office, the dredging program has no direct financial benefit to the town. The dredging of Jinks Creek during normal real estate conditions might increase home sales values by up to 20% for properties located on Riverside Drive, North Shore Drive East, and Canal Drive. They also explain this is not an assessment issue, since new property sales values are also used as a tool to determine future property valuations. Needless to say, I was disappointed when the majority refused my request to invite a county tax office specialist to a meeting. My colleagues and not our attorney need to explain to our taxpayers why this is not a reasonable, foreseeable financial benefit. Honestly, I am having a difficult time explaining this constant question that I receive by the taxpayers. Mr. Mayor, appearances matter. In order to avoid even the slightest appearance of any potential conflict of interest, and to hopefully put this matter to rest for our taxpayers, I would like to file the following motion. If and when the shoreline management program is permitted by the various government agencies, that a binding survey will be conducted and distributed to all of the impacted owners in order for them to decide if they wish to participate in the shoreline management program, along with their approval to dredge Jinks Creek.
All right, there's a motion, discussion on the motion. I have one comment with regard to the motion. I might have a couple comments with regard to the motion for the survey. From the outset, I made it clear my analysis, my approach is that the concept of dredging does not just impact the property owners impacted. Obviously, there's going to be municipal costs involved. There's a substantial portion on one of the substantial frontage on one of the areas to be dredged that belongs to the municipality. Also, what I'm basing my comment on is, yeah, you're right, it's not on the agenda. So, all right, with I've had discussions with Mr. Serrato about this in the past, and basis I say that it impacts the entire municipality is the assessed value, and the properties that are impacted represent over 30% of the assessed value of the municipality. If there was a decline in the value of those properties, which will happen if those properties are not allowed to be dredged and the grasses meet each other, they will then become wetlands and could never be dredged, and they're no longer waterfront property. And they most certainly will have a negative impact on the assessed value of those properties. And the assessment is not just based upon resales. A case in point was what the town went through with the reassessment fairly recently. I don't remember what year it was, where town-wide the values declined substantially, and it wasn't because 4,000 properties were sold, it was because they were all reassessed by the county. And in a reassessment, you have to take that into consideration. If you're talking about 30% of your town assessment, there's only two things. The town doesn't have a money tree. There's only two things that affect real property taxes: rate and base. If your base goes down, your rate has to go up, which is what happened in the decline in the real estate values. The rate had to go up because the base went down. And if you're talking about 30% of your base, and the reality of not an immediate, but the reality of a eventual decline in that assessment, it impacts the entire municipality. So I'm definitely not in favor of a survey of only the 170 or 350 or how many properties that would be impacted by that are on the areas to be dredged.
Let me add two things just for an historical.
Mike.
Let me add two thoughts to what you just said. Waterfront properties are assessed an escalator clause by the county. There's a multiplier that's given to the property for water frontage. You're absolutely correct that all that would happen is that the properties aren't going to increase in value with dredging, but dredging may prevent a large decrease in value. That's number one. Number two, you talk about a survey. You know, the whole reason the town went to the legislature to get approval for a tax district is so that they would not have to get 51% of the people on each canal to agree to dredge. Having waterfront property is good for the town. We're a water community. This was done to avoid those types of conflicts between neighbors, to eliminate the need for having to go and, have the people on a particular canal, get petitions and signatures from at least 51% of the people. Ocean Isle doesn't do that. They have a tax district set up. People pay into the fund, and when dredging is necessary, dredging occurs. Now, I agree we're in a little bit of a different situation. We're in a different situation because our consultant proposed a large area that we had not considered handling before. And maybe that's something that's worth looking into, but it kind of depends on what the scientists tell us. I mean, we don't know if we're even going to be able to dredge that area. But in terms of a survey on just the people who own properties on a canal, we have a tax district to avoid that. So we don't have to do that. And there was notice given for years. We have had this discussion for at least the last 6 or 7 years in council. So I'm just putting that out there.
The fact that it's not on the agenda, what's the significance? I say the fact that it's not on the agenda, what's the significance? Can we vote on this motion?
Well, generally, you should only take action on those items listed on the agenda.
Okay, then we can put it on the agenda for future action.
Yes, you can.
All right, that's what I suggest that we do then, so we don't run afoul of anything, but.
Can we address this? The elephant in the room is the
Well, the
constant
conflict.
charges.
The conflict.
Constant charges.
The conflict we can
conflicts of
address,
interest.
that's on the agenda.
Well, the other side, the other concern I have with this motion at this time is that the topic at hand is conflict of interest. The topic of hand is not dredging surveys. And so when we get to an appropriate part in the agenda, either today or at a future time, then we can address,
All right, but let's address the
Address
conflict of
surveys.
interest. Because we
it's
keep
premature
getting,
now.
this has been brought up,
But,
but Rich.
in fairness, he didn't put it on the agenda. He's not, he's obviously participating in it, but he is not the one that requested it be put on this agenda.
I'm talking about the motion he made.
Yeah,
that
okay.
The
Mr.
motion
Stern made.
reflects that, the letter to the editor reflects that, we need to in public, we know what the answer that we have, that's been given to us by our town attorney, but in public, I would like you to address these accusations.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Members of council, there's a couple of things for everyone's benefit as far as I'm concerned. Number one, the town doesn't even know what is going to be dredged, if anything, because we're in the investigation stages of the possibility of dredging, including what areas may be dredged, including cost estimates for it. I think we're under a scoping scenario right now where we're in a fact gathering stage. And ultimately, I can assure you, in all my years of practice in law on the coast, in CAMA jurisdiction, they're not going to allow for dredging of environmentally sensitive areas unless, in their opinion, doing so complies with the protective provisions of the Coastal Area Management Act and the Coastal Resources Commission's rules and regulations, and the Division of Coastal Management's rules and regulations, and the statutes that govern them. That's why we have those agencies and departments, is to serve that vital public benefit of protecting this state's natural resources. But we don't even know what's going to be dredged, if anything, because our team of professionals, Moffett and Nichols, is looking into the feasibility, what areas can and cannot be dredged in compliance with state law. So, assuming hypothetically that our engineers come back and our professionals come back with what can and cannot be done, and then cost estimates for the dredging, the question I've been presented is, well, can Mr. Corbett and Ms. Scott vote to approve, hypothetically, future dredging of areas of water bodies that their properties happen to be adjacent to? Because it's been claimed that they would have an appearance of impropriety because they would somehow financially benefit. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I've read the law. I've looked at the law. I'm not perfect by any means, but I will tell you that your own materials, Mr. Serrato, talking about a reasonably foreseeable financial benefit. The term financial benefits defined as a direct pecuniary gain or loss, or a direct pecuniary loss to a business competitor. Whether it's 177 people that are going to benefit directly from the dredging, or even more, like 350, if it's just 170, I don't believe that gives rise to a direct pecuniary gain by Mr. Corbett and Ms. Scott, requiring them to recuse themselves and requiring them to avoid their duty to vote for the town's business. Now, I don't believe either that we can even get to the part of whether the financial benefit would impair the public servant's judgment or whether it could be reasonably inferred that the public servant's judgment would be impaired. Again, we don't have any final recommendations. There is no vote on dredging. We don't know the cost estimates. But assuming that the town in the future is prepared to vote for dredging and to implement it on areas next to Mr. Corbett and Ms. Scott's property in a class of at least 170 people or more, property owners, I don't believe that constitutes a direct pecuniary gain that would subject him to any impropriety or violation of any ethical standards that govern their duties to the town citizens, and its town council members. Lastly,
So do I understand you to say that we have an affirmative obligation to vote?
it's my opinion that you do. You look at the School of Government's opinions on this continuum of absolutely no benefit to a direct benefit, and you have this sliding scale, because everything's on a fact-by-fact basis. But what I know is this falls in my opinion, to the class benefit of a large class of folks. And that's just on the dredging. I think an argument can be reasonably made that the entire town of Sunset Beach and all of its citizens and all members who enjoy recreating in navigable streams of water that are governed and policed by the Coastal Area Management Act and the Division of Coastal Management and the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources and so forth and so on, would all benefit from a dredging of waterways and water bodies to allow more folks to use those water bodies than can otherwise use them now with boats. And I'm not even talking about deep water access. I don't think it matters whether they get deep water access or not.
Grady, please, if I may.
Are you finished?
It's my opinion, to be as clear as I can, based on what we know now. Number one, I don't think there's anything that prevents Mr. Corbett and Ms. Scott from taking part in the investigation and the research of whether or not it's feasible to do dredging for the town. And I furthermore do not believe, absent some substantial change down the road based upon Moffitt and Nichols' recommendations, that they are going to be in conflict and prohibited from voting on the ultimate decision by the town as to whether or not to implement dredging recommendations by the engineer.
Okay, now, this is John's.
Let him speak.
Oh, go ahead. You had something you want to ask, Grady?
I was, like I said, I was always advised my staff never to talk to an employee's attorney.
Is your thing turned on?
But I'm the town's
Can you hear me
attorney.
now?
But I'm the town's attorney.
No, it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. That's how I've been trained. First of all, only 3% of our citizens have boats. So to make this
So what?
case, this is going to be a benefit to the town, I think is a little exaggerated.
I'm sorry, what did you say about the voting? What did you say about the 3%?
3% of their people have boats registered with the county.
What?
Okay.
143 people have registered boats out of a population around 3,700
Within the town.
within the town.
How about within the county?
He used, that
I'm-
number, that number he's
Okay,
presented before.
I'm just, this is a town issue, okay? Dredging Jinks Creek is a town issue. It's gonna allow people to go to the waterway who live in those areas, okay? Secondly, this matter, and I'll repeat again, I don't wanna get into a debate whether it's a conflict of interest, foreseeable finance. The data and the information that I provided to you was given to me by the tax office.
You're
Okay.
talking, and
Now,
with
I'm
the-
not going to debate them unless you want to,
We
okay?
don't know what you asked them.
And the idea of the dredging,
Hearsay, as far as I'm concerned.
and the idea of dredging, Jinks Creek was an add-on. It was not the original intent of the shoreline management program. Okay? So there's a lot of things here that just,
So let me,
there's a lot of bits and pieces that need to be connected.
so let me address the county tax information where you said that the properties, or the county opines that the properties that would get this water access by way of the dredging could increase by what?
Up to,
Up to 25%?
up to 20%.
Speculation, and it's not a direct pecuniary gain. It's not as though Ms. Scott is the principal owner in Moffitt and Nichols and is going to benefit by Moffitt and Nichols getting a contract for dredging or scoping and investigatory services by the town. That would be a direct pecuniary gain.
Grady, what I'm just basically saying is that this should be a impacted taxpayer decision. And it
Right,
should not be force-fed or dictated by the town.
Well, that,
And when the dredging district was established, there was
Topic,
very little
please, topic.
communication.
If that's-
And nothing was ever reduced to writing to inform the
Rich, we've
taxpayers.
already,
That's
we've already
actually
said.
not true,
we-
but I don't want to
we put
debate it
that-
right now.
We put that on for, that doesn't have anything to do with conflict of interest, but it will be addressed, because I said it'll be agenda item at a future date. But it's, that isn't really relevant to the conflict of interest.
Okay, well,
John, you had,
Did anybody else have anything? All right. Following the pattern of Mr. Serrato, I actually have a prepared statement, so please indulge me. I want to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to address the controversy concerning conflict of interest vis-à-vis the dredging issue, and I sincerely hope this is the last time this will be discussed. Mr. Serrato continues to beat this issue into the ground, despite a legal opinion from our town attorney, repeated here, was also articulated in June 2016, that informed him that there is no basis for his claim. He continues to carry on despite a response from the University of North Carolina School of Government that upon examination shows there is no basis for his claim. Mr. Richardson brought up some of the conditions that were included in the School of Government response. Mr. Serrato alleges a number of alternative facts. He claims that my property and Ms. Scott's mine on Canal Drive will increase in value 5 to 20% according to the Brunswick County Tax Office.
sales value. There's a difference. So
I let
please
you
quote-
speak. I
please
let you
quote me correctly.
I let you
All right.
speak.
Okay, Rich.
Let me speak.
okay, Rich.
According to the Brunswick County Tax Office, should the dredging project as currently being considered come to pass, and as such he claims I will incur significant financial gain and should recuse myself as a conflict of interest. So point number one, no one can guarantee a 5 to 20% increase in my property value. This constitutes speculation or wishful thinking, and speculation is not a basis for conflict of interest, as our attorney pointed out. Fact number two, if there is an increase in value, mine would be one of some 350 parcels to reap such a benefit. The issue applies to a large group of people, not just me, and thus, again, as our attorney pointed out, conflict of interest does not apply. Fact number three, should that benefit occur, my property value will increase in paper value until I choose to sell, and so will my taxes until that time. And let me say, I'm happy to pay the taxes even if they increase, because the property increases. I, like the other canal owners, paid a premium for our property that had navigable waters to the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway, and we have been paying higher taxes for the higher valued land as compared to nearby property, not on the water. Number four, in case you're interested, since 2011, the tax value of my waterfront property, and no doubt those around me, have decreased significantly, 67%. I'll give you a dollar value if you want. Yet my property remains at a value 40% higher than the property across the street that is not on water. Again, there's a premium that we pay to be on water that has navigable access to the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway. Summarizing this part then, my wife and I moved into our newly built home in 2015. We have a 30-year mortgage. We plan to live in this house the remainder of our lives and then pass it on to our children. And hopefully they will not have to put up with this kind of conflict of interest fight. That being said, the only financial impact I will personally enjoy is the continued opportunity to pay higher taxes. Mr. Serrato has ignored my request to him that he provide evidence, real facts and figures that prove I will enjoy financial gains. I've also asked him to document in emails how that alleged gain means I will be in violation of the ethical standards of the North Carolina North Carolina Ethics Commission. I made these requests in March. He continues to make the allegations, but ignores my request that he document them. Could it be that there is no such evidence? According to the North Carolina School of Government, in response to the request that Mr. Serrato submitted to them, the following criteria determine if a council member should be denied the right to vote. One is if the effect on a council member is the same as the effect on a significant number of citizens, as has been pointed out, then it is fair to allow the member to vote. As pointed out, I would be one of 350 beneficiaries if we limit it to the people who live on the water and don't include the rest of Sunset Beach and people in the county who also benefit. Score that one fact for me. 2, an insignificant financial interest is not enough to sway a person's vote and should not be used to deny the vote. The numbers show that I will incur additional cost, not gain, not direct pecuniary gain. Have trouble with that word. And there's no significant financial interest beyond what other citizens living on the water would have. Score second fact for me. 3, the likelihood that financial benefit will occur must be measured. Real estate values rise and fall. Even if my property was assessed at a 20% increase, and this is speculation, it would take, in my estimate, over 10 years at 20% a year to make up for the 67% drop in value since 2011. Score third for me. My situation does not come close to meeting the criteria for a conflict of interest, does not constitute an ethical conflict of interest, and does not provide the basis for me to recuse myself. However, under North Carolina law, if I recuse myself from a vote with no basis, then I could be derelict in my duties and committing a violation of the Code of Ethics. It appears to me that Mr. Serrato is attempting to goad me and Ms. Scott into such a violation. Despite the fact that the council has made no decision on the dredging project, despite the fact that we do not have all the facts about the project, despite the fact that the various state agencies have not ruled on any aspect of the project, Mr. Serrato assumes he knows how I will vote and on what I will be voting for. Until the full information of dredging comes available, I really don't know what I'm going to be voting for. I don't believe Mr. Serrato has a crystal ball, and even if he does, based on his previous analysis, I doubt its accuracy. He does not know what we'll be voting on. Yes, Mr. Serrato makes many assumptions, puts forth alternative facts to suit the conclusion he wishes to reach, and asks a myriad of questions and makes many allegations to the public and to the press, but his facts are questionable at best. To wrap this up, I would highlight one question Mr. Serrato posed to Professor Freda Bluestein at the UNC School of Government, a question that the good professor did not answer. In closing of his October 4, 2016 email to Professor Bluestein, he asked, quote, "Am I nuts?" unquote. I leave it to the others in this room to give him an answer. Thank you for indulging me.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think I'm nuts. I may be suspicious. First of all, I attempted to invite the county tax office to this meeting.
Rich, is there something new you wanna-
Listen, I was just told that I was nuts.
No.
I just informed, I requested this council to have the county tax office specialist to come to a meeting. That request was refused. And I'm going to repeat again what they said to me. Sales valuation when you sell your home. Thirdly, this is for Mr. Richardson. The previous areas have been dredged. They have been previously dredged, and there is no reason not to get a permit because they have been previously dredged. The only area that has not been dredged is Jinks Creek.
Mr. Serrato, you are 100% wrong.
Mary's Creek has been dredged.
Jinks Creek has been dredged. The canal area has been dredged. They have
Jinks
not-
Creek
No.
has never
They have not been
dredged.
permitted, listen to me.
No.
Listen to my answer. They have not been permitted because there was not a permitting requirement. If you listen to what Mr. Nichols said, he said they were. If you read the reports that were submitted by the ERC from one of their scientists, in that report, it says they were dredged in 1970. Jinks Creek was dredged in 1970.
No, it was not.
That
Jinks
report
Creek-
says that it was.
Jinks Creek
Does
was
it-
never
look, for our
dredged.
purposes right now,
And
it
on-
doesn't matter.
On top of that, why you're wrong is, I talked to people that lived here then, and they said they did dredge.
Jinks Creek was never dredged.
It-
It was established as a P&A in 1970.
Rich,
It
the-
doesn't matter.
the northern portion of it was, but.
Topic, please.
Hey, I'm
Bob,
sorry.
I will
The
defer
bottom
my
line-
motion until the next council
Well,
meeting.
The
the
bo-
motion is the first one.
The bottom line is that we have been advised, believe me, I'm the first one that will recuse myself if I am told that that is a financial conflict of interest, and I need to do that. Okay? I have been specifically advised by our town attorney that it is not a financial conflict of interest that would subject me to recusal, and that I have an affirmative obligation to vote. Period. Can we please put that aside? I know you didn't get the answer that you want, Rich, and you may not agree with him. He is our town attorney. That's who I'm listening to. And let's just move on. And we'll talk about the merits of dredging are absolutely worth discussing. But at least the conflict of interest issue, can we please?
I will
Put to
submit my
bed.
motion next week, at the next council meeting.
We'll put it on, well, we'll talk about the next council meeting, but it'll be on a future agenda.
I would like to do it at the next
Well,
council.
I'm not sure we're gonna, it's good, okay, the next one, all right. It may not be it may not be in May, but we'll deal with that at the end of the meeting. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to discuss with regard to this agenda item? Nothing appearing, then we're gonna move on to the next thing, which is does anybody envision any need for retention of Mr. Richardson for the rest of the meeting?
No.
Okay, great, you're excused, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the town administrator report. Go ahead,
Thank
you're
you.
on.
Good evening.
It's on.
There we go.
It's on.
I
It's
got
on,
it.
it's
I
on.
got it. All right, just a few items. I'll be brief. I also want to thank both the organizers and the staff for all the work that they did regarding the Strawberry and Wine Festival this Sunday. I hope the organizers plan to do it again in our park next year. The covered picnic area is done? It'll hopefully be done tomorrow, correct? As you know, we've been busy with preparations involving budget and audit, and I also want to thank staff for all the work they've been doing on those items. We did submit a grant for the Living Shoreline Project at the town park for a 50% reimbursable grant. I want to remind everybody that the farmers market begins this Thursday. In addition, the Memorial Day celebration will be held Monday the 29th at 10 o'clock. And lastly, the Camascopy meeting has been scheduled for this Friday at 10 a.m. That hasn't been formally confirmed yet, but I plan on attending that meeting at that time. And that's all I have for today.
Okay.
On that issue, there's been some discussion, and there's nowhere on the agenda to talk about it, so I'll jump on your comments.
I think it was added.
Yes, it is, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Echo.
Next item is the police report, department reports. Police?
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Well, being this is my first report, I'm sorry if I stumble through, and forgive me. We'll make it short and sweet. But the numbers you have that are in front of you, I believe in your packets, represent the calls for service for the police department for the month of March 2017. Outside of that, I could stand up here for probably another hour and tell you some of the things that I'm going to work on, but that's not going to happen. But I will let you know, as I mentioned in our budget session, I'm looking at everything from vehicles to policies, procedures. We're working right now on the issuance of Narcan for our officers. I sat down with Fire Chief this morning as we're discussing policy as we move forward, so that first responders will have that ability to save folks that do happen to overdose from opioids. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of things I'm looking at, and again, I'm super excited to be here and hitting the ground running for sure. So unless you have any questions for me,
Any questions? Thank you.
thank you.
That was short and sweet. It was. Public Works?
We like that.
Just to add to what Susan said about the cover seating area, they just started on the metal today. They should finish it tomorrow. So once the metal roof is on, it'll be complete. We also took down the chain link fence that was back there behind Twin Lakes and installed a root fence. And we have added 6 more parking places back there also. And also the contractor has started on 10th Street of the renovations to 10th. I do not know a date yet when that will be completed yet.
Dustin, that rope fence and the gate that your staff made looks excellent.
Thank
Great job on that.
I'll tell them.
Susan, we had an issue Sunday with somebody parking right in front of the swing, and that's a vehicle access for emergency. Do we want to maybe put a sign there that says no parking?
We've already designed it.
You,
Yes. We good?
thank
We
you.
good?
Thank you.
Okay. Planning inspections?
Good evening.
Evening.
You've got our numbers in front of you. They're well, about normal. I mean, it's business as usual for us. We are ready for our pickup season for a lot of our stuff, getting ready to come up in May and June in the building season. My desk has been swamped with building plans and flood permits, and so it's been pretty much nonstop for us. But outside of the daily operations, we have, as y'all remember, last week or week before, days are blurring together, but the Campbell Land Use Plan meeting, the changes have been made. They are available on the project website. We also have them available for you if you need them emailed to you as well, the changes that we were discussed at the last meeting. And we'll prepare either for another meeting or a public hearing at y'all's leisure. So I'll give y'all a chance to review that and come back to us with if you think we need to go for another full-on review or if you're ready for public hearing.
I don't know if anybody else has this for us. I would like to see a hard copy
Okay.
before we even talk about a public hearing. It's just too hard to flip back and forth online. Anybody else want a hard copy?
I'd like one.
Shouldn't be a
I
problem.
think maybe.
Yeah, a hard
everybody
copy's
should.
good,
All councils
because
should
right now it's in individual chapters, and you can't word search through the whole thing, and I know it's because the file's too big to bring it all to one, but without that ability, I'm dealing with 8 different books, and it's,
We'll kill a few trees, don't worry.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a sense, or do you know how many houses are currently under construction in all of Sunset Beach?
Under construction currently, no. I know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 8 are going on or being finalized out soon. And I've got another 4 that I've gone through in the last 2 weeks for just the planning stage. So it's,
Sounds like a building boom.
yeah. Well, compared to the last decade, it's definitely a building boom.
A question for you. The new house is being built at Oceanfront. Are we making sure that they follow regulations on the length and the width of the driveways
Um,
on Oceanfront? There's 2 on 36, one on 36th Street, one on 39th Street.
yeah, we'll take a look at it. They should be, the driveway lengths or widths are supposed to be about 20 feet
Right.
continuous.
It seems like they designate the whole 50 feet like most of the old buildings did.
Well, the part of that comes in probably with the landscaping appearing to be also be some rocking areas too.
Okay.
So there's a not a hard differentiation between the driveway versus landscape in a lot of the situations. And that's something we can address further in other updates to the land use ordinance or the city ordinances if y'all want.
So that becomes tough without a curb cut for a driveway, you know?
Yeah.
You can't establish what the driveway width is.
We could curb.
Yeah.
Oh, bite
After we,
your tongue.
after we dredge.
Oh, bite your tongue.
Look at
Are
me,
you gonna
look at
work
me.
for the next 10 years for free?
I
Hiram,
kid.
you may wish to mention that you have a new employee starting
Oh
on
yeah.
Friday.
as we mentioned last time, and again, Stanley Deals is starting with us on Thursday of this week. You know, he's coming straight from Calabash for us, but he's our new building inspector, and as we discussed at the budget previously, he's more than capable of taking care of the buildings that we have presently in the town. And I personally feel that we're building a strong department with a strong staff, very professional staff. So, not that I'm tooting my own horn.
Okay.
Anything else for?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire?
Good evening. You have my numbers for March. We started the beach patrol season. It was fairly busy Easter. I actually came out Sunday, and I was very surprised to see how many people were already on the beach. Talked to several of the businesses, and they're very happy with the amount of people that showed up here at Easter. We had a very large crowd. One of the busiest Easters I've seen since I've been here, 18 years, and that's the busiest I've ever seen our Easter. A lot of people in the water. I ventured out there Sunday. We have started doing a lot of water rescue training, so if you see us out on the beach, that's just training right now. That's a majority. I know we had 2 or 3 groups Saturday that went in and out of the water several times using the jet ski. I was out there Thursday. It's still a little chilly for me, but once you're in, you're in. It's fine once you're in. I don't know if I got numb, but it's still a little cold. Just want to remind everybody, smoke detectors, it's spring, check them, make sure they're working good. Well, if you have any problems with them, call us. We'll come out and give you a hand. Station 2 is leak-free. We've had several rainstorms to test it. We've had no issues there, so they're back in. And the new fire engine is running up and down the road. I'm sure everybody's seen it. Everything's on it. It's in service and ready to go. Feel free to come by, check it out. It's at Station 2. They're there. Come by, see it, look at it, put your hands on it. It's pretty interesting. Any questions for me?
Anything else? Okay.
No.
Thank you. Thanks, Evan. Finance.
The lady of the hour.
You've got my numbers, and you've got my numbers, and you've got my numbers in front of you. I just want to run through that gray envelope, the package in the gray envelope. You have an updated, complete, detailed page per department. Actually, let me start from the beginning. The first sheet that you've got, first couple of sheets, are it's the revenue, but I've added a summary that has all the funds, revenue minus expenditures, and the unassigned or assigned, committed, restricted fund balance as of the end of June last year. So it's the audit number for the fund balance, what we had going into fiscal 17, the year that we're in now. So that's just a snapshot view of all the funds. Then the next 2 pages after that are the detail pages for just the general fund. And we'll go over that in lots more detail. I just wanted to let you know there's a new sheet that you hadn't seen before. Then you've got some total pages for the expenditures, and then you've got the detail pages for the expenditures, general fund and the other funds. And then you have a revised capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. And I want to point out one item that is different from what we talked about on Saturday. In the capital improvement plan, as you recall, we had a $500,000 placeholder to replace the roof on Fire Station 1. That's actually going to be a 2-year project, and the first year is going to be basically engineering to determine what exactly the cost of replacing the roof will be, so that it is not just a placeholder but a real number. So I've taken the $500,000 out of potentially being funded in fiscal 18 and instead put 50,000 in for the engineering study. And if you recall, what you had requested was, in the capital improvement plan, you wanted to see what was budgeted already in the detail pages next to what remains to be budgeted that could conceivably happen in fiscal 18 should you decide to go forward. So you've got a total of 663,000 that is currently funded in the recommended budget for fiscal 18, and another 1.2 million that could be done depending on how you want to do it. But the 1.2 million is not currently budgeted. Okay. And again, we'll
So I
go,
assume we have our homework before we meet Thursday.
you do, you do.
And once again, I'd just like to remind council people for Thursday, go over them with a fine-tooth comb so we're in a position to address what you have concerns with on the expenditure sides.
And then the last page is just a recalculation of the list that you had asked for, Rich, that had a couple of mistakes on it. The professional services and contract services. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
Old business, item number 6. Consideration of the approval for electrical vehicle charging substation placement.
Several months back, when Brunswick Electric come to us and asked us about putting a charging station on Sunset Boulevard in front of Sunset Properties, we received a letter saying that they would pull that if we needed to, if we wanted them to pull it.
Pull it?
Yeah, remove it at no charge to the town, the charging station.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
If they put it
It's a
in and we
charging
want
station
If it
for
doesn't work
cars.
out, they will remove it.
Yes. DOT has gave them permission to go ahead and install this in the right-of-way on Sunset Boulevard.
In the right-of-way?
Yeah, it's in the DOT's right-of-way.
As
But that, what happens with bikes? I mean, that's supposed
No,
to be a
no,
bike lane.
no,
It's
no,
in the
this
parking
is
place.
streetscape.
Streetscape, yes.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Excuse me, no, there's, no, beyond, the right-of-way is 100 feet, am I
100
correct?
Yes.
50
Yeah,
feet
100
from
feet.
center line. All the parking spaces on the east side are within the state right-of-way. So we needed to get an encroachment, permission to install this
Yes.
in the state of right-of-way. That's why, because it's a
You're
100-foot
talking about where the
right-of-way.
parking spots are.
Yes.
Not-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, not in the
parking.
bike path
No,
or
no,
not
no.
on the grass. It's beyond that. We
But
presented
it's
you.
supposed to take up 2?
One.
It'll
One
take,
spot.
it'll
That's
take
better.
up one. We
One.
showed a picture, it's in front of
Sunset Properties.
Properties.
Yes, take up one space.
Is there
Now,
any,
what do we do if Sunset Properties somebody in Sunset Properties winds up charging their vehicle there all the time? Because they're already parking 10 cars out in the
there's-
parking spots every day.
If council directs, we will put an ordinance together that disallows that. We
well,
can
what-
limit,
What we need to do is, it's certainly a futuristic thing that we need to get on board with, electric cars, a charging station. And since they're willing to put it in on their nickel,
Mhm.
I think we need to take this opportunity. However, what Carol's saying is true. We can't just have somebody parking there. So we need to have some way to enforce that it, and I don't know how far we want to carry that thinking, but somebody that plugs in and then walks to the beach and leaves their car there for 4 hours, and it only takes 2 hours to charge, it would be like me parking in a parking meter and filling it up full of quarters, and then it expires and I get a ticket.
And what if, and, you know, I can see a situation where somebody is charging their car, every day,
no.
5 days a week.
Well,
I'll look at what other communities are doing as far as enforcement and restrictions, and we'll bring that back at the next council meeting.
And Pete, Monty did say it's about a 4-hour charge for most electric cars.
You know, this is the same issue sort of that we have with the park. If you go to the park during the evening in the summer, it's loaded with cars from the Twin Lakes restaurant. So I don't know how you control that.
Well, this charging station is there for a very specific, unique, dedicated purpose.
Well-
Unlike the park has parking stalls. There's certain things that are reasonable to administer and some things that are not reasonable to
Well,
administer.
If I can submit, it's real simple. There are progressive areas, like if you're out in California, in any parking garage, they've got a dozen of these charging stations, and they have very, very strict ordinances and regulations about their use. So it can be done. I mean, it's pretty simple to do.
Let me ask a basic question. This isn't free, is it? Somebody has to put a credit card in there, Susan,
I'm sorry,
Dustin?
there's-
These aren't free.
These are free.
Free. They are free.
That's why I have
They're
huge
free to the
concerns.
people.
They are free at this point in
time.
time until BEMC decides that they're no longer.
Down the road, Pete,
Yes.
they will put a charge onto it with a credit card.
This is a good
It's not-
opportunity
we're
for
not
us to
paying.
figure
It's not
out
Rivera, which
how
we're-
it works,
No.
what kind of problems and issues they are, and it's not gonna cost us anything. We can figure out, as we go along, how to adjust if, non-electric cars are trying to park in there, or if people are abusing it by coming back and forth. It's
Now
a
that-
good idea to get it started.
Now that it's one and not two parking spots, and they will pull it if we say pull it,
Yes.
I'm okay with it.
All right,
And I wasn't originally, so.
is anybody,
We just needed
Yeah,
action from the
does
council.
anybody need, I'll entertain a motion. when
I-
Do a
we-
motion to accept it.
No, let's expand a little bit. May I?
No.
Use your mic.
Is it
No.
okay, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I move that we allow BEMC to install an electric charging station on Sunset Boulevard under the condition that it's one space and that they will pull it if the town determines that it's not meeting its needs.
Okay.
And Susan and Dustin will work on ordinance wording that we make sure just electric cars park in that space.
All right, that's the motion. Any other discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next is 6B, consideration of appointment of Board of Adjustment members. Before we get into a motion to appoint anybody, Carol, you wanted to, I think you brought up the question of somebody re-upping.
Well, it's a matter of procedure. When we have vacancies.
Microphone, Carol.
Terms are,
Carol.
when we have terms expiring for both the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment, and those are the two committees that we appoint members to, we need to ensure that part of the procedure before any advertising goes on is that the current members are called and asked if they plan to re-up, and if they are, to have the procedures explained. I'm just wondering if we ought to think about, we've been advertising, whether it's an actual vacancy or somebody is going to reapply for a position that they've already held. We've been doing that for a while, and I really question whether we should continue to do that. If, on the other hand, I have not, in my own head, been able to come up with any way around advertising and re-interviewing. What?
I don't think
Susan?
we want to give a lifetime position to any of those.
No, it's not a lifetime position.
Pete,
but-
I'm just saying, like Veronica White, she did, first term, she didn't know that she had to be notified to
Well, that's a
re-up
different
it.
thing. That's a reporting process.
Right.
Where we would notify somebody that their term is expiring.
I don't
Susan.
have any good way of doing it. Maybe we would ask the boards what they
Susan.
would like to see.
Susan?
I think that's a perfect role for the chairperson of a board. I mean, that's their role, is to maintain both the integrity and the function of the board. And I think the chairperson should be that person.
Well, I can tell you the way.
I don't think it should fall to staff.
I think it should fall to the town clerk, who knows when the expiration dates are, can call up, even if it means calling the chairperson and say, would you please call this member, and tell them they have to reapply.
Well, let me, based on my experience, the way we did it in my past life, is there were some appointments that were mayor appointments, there were some appointments that were council appointments. And the entity responsible for the appointment would contact the person whose term was up, do you still want to continue? And we didn't go through an advertising, we never went through an advertising for a position in the first place, but there would be no consideration if the person, assuming the person was performing and didn't burn down the building or cause some real big problem.
Let's set
That-
higher standards than that.
That normally the person would be reappointed. I mean, there were times when you didn't want to reappoint the people, but it wouldn't be for a lifetime appointment. There'd be for a term, but before the term is expired, we would contact the person, say, you know, are you still interested? You still want to do it? If we were inclined to reappoint the person.
Well, the other issue, Bob, is that we deny an opportunity for others by automatic appointments, and that's the part that I get
No,
concerned.
Rich.
That's what I've struggled with, which is why I haven't been able to come up with anything in my own head that would.
Yeah.
But it's not automatic. They're just being notified if you'd like to apply again.
And I
That's
agree
it.
with what Mark just said, not if, hey, do you want the job again? That's not the way it needs to be
Right.
phrased, because if somebody is not, let's say the chairperson is not really satisfied with somebody's attendance or performance, it should be up to council, and there's ways of doing that by advertising and bringing in other candidates if the council so chooses that that's the way we want to do it on
The
those
only-
boards.
The only difficulty with that is when you advertise a vacancy, I remember calling and saying, this is going back 15, 20 years, saying, is that a real vacancy or is the person reapplying? Knowing that that person was going to be appointed again if they wanted to be. And there was really not a real vacancy, and I wouldn't bother submitting a resume for that because there was no reason for me to be doing that.
I think
But I've
times
struggled with
are
the
different
concept,
now.
but I've struggled with the
This isn't
concept.
the good old boy town it
But I've
used to be.
I'm just telling you, I have struggled with the concept, is you don't want people to think that they're gonna be there for life if they want to be. So maybe the answer,
The whole point, though, is we wanted to make sure that the people who are serving know that they have to
Right.
reapply to get another term and get reappointed.
Can I
It's
suggest
very
this?
simple, right,
The only
John?
thing-
Just
the
like
only thing-
that.
The only thing is, the only thing that you're talking about changing, basically, is that somebody
that the person
contact
is contact,
the person
right.
whose term is up to see if,
Right.
to make sure they are aware that they have to reapply.
But if anybody can ever figure out another way of doing it, let me know.
Well,
I
they
can't.
still go through the same process, you're not
Yeah.
changing the process. It's just that somebody notify that the term is up.
I nominate Lisa.
All right, moving on.
Now, there was a question also about the ETJ, whether we heard anything on the county on the ETJ member for the Board of Adjustment.
I was told by one of our commissioners that they had a plan. Now, we've been too distracted with the fire fund fees, meeting with our commissioner, to bring that up again. So I was hoping that maybe Susan had heard something. Because this has been 3 weeks ago that he told me that.
Before we have a discussion on the new appointments that we're gonna make, could somebody explain what the process is going to be? How do we filter down from 5 to,
Someone makes,
Appointed.
under the procedure, I would prefer that there be, like a discussion of the candidates, but under the voting procedure, somebody makes a motion to appoint somebody, and then we have a discussion on it.
Don't forget that one of the positions is gonna be the alternate position. So-
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. And then we can discuss it.
Started it.
Or had you already started it,
Yeah,
Mark?
that's
Go
all
ahead.
right.
Then you go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Veronica White and Bruce Haldeman for the.
Veronica White for the
Veronica White is a
for the
reappointment.
regular position.
Right,
And then Bruce Hovermill for the alternate
Alternate.
position.
Do you, does anybody have, well,
did we lose 2? I thought we lost 2.
no, it was one
The
permanent.
One
ETJ,
prime, one
we're
alternate.
short 2 ETJ people, a regular and
Does-
an alternate.
Does anybody have a difficulty with addressing them both at the same time? It's the same part of the same motion. Okay.
I don't, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
unless you do.
All right. That's a motion. Any discussion?
just that, I just want to point out that Veronica White is currently on the board, and she's done a fine job. Some of the
We had
skills-
we had 4 other great candidates
We
too
had,
to
we
consider for the
had
alternate.
excellent candidates. I think what Bruce would bring to the board is not only an engineering background, but he's actually had quite a lot of experience
So you're holding that against him?
in litigation. No, I know. Okay, he's an engineer we can't consider. You're always talking about the lawyers. In any event, he does bring skills that I think the board will be extremely useful to the board. So,
All right, no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is acceptance, or consideration of the adoption of the UDO ordinance amendment for Article 6, Section 6.06D.
Mayor, one point that goes back to what we just talked about. Can we inform these
Yeah.
candidates that have been selected that they have in fact been selected, and when their terms expire?
I would also, as part of that, I would also like to suggest that we inform the other people that expressed interest and thank them for their expression of interest.
Good point, Bob.
Okay. The next item is the consideration and adoption of the UDO ordinance amendment for Article 6, Section 6.06D, the mainland business district.
we had a bunch of questions the last time, and I see that some of these changes were not made.
The reason they weren't made is because the public hearing hadn't been held yet.
Gotcha.
All,
Now we can do that?
yes, as a matter of process, you shouldn't make changes to their recommendation until the public have had a chance to speak their mind. Otherwise, we can just send it back to the planning board if you're not ready for the public hearing. Changes should come after the public hearing.
Okay, so on that note, we were talking about deleting on page 3, item number D,
Question about that.
and I have a question too.
Just for point of clarity, this language is in almost all our zones. All of our zones allow that, not all all the zones that allow multifamily allow this same language in it.
What bothered me was that we were reducing the setback requirement in that area
The front yard.
and leaving the two back, every 2 feet back you get a foot in height. So in a sense, all that's happened is that they can now go higher.
Well,
Because they can go closer to the street.
To an extent, they also still have to meet the side setbacks. As a condition, the total side setback also has to be reduced as well as the front setback in order to increase that height. So,
But it's only 5 feet now. What was it before?
no. The side for multifamily units in the town is 20 feet. There's other regulations that apply to multifamily units that aren't presented
It says
under Article 6.
Non-residential uses, number 1, required yards. No building shall be less than 5 feet from the property line abutting any street right-of-way. No other yards are required.
And
What does
that-
that mean?
Well, those are for commercial buildings? That's stayed the same, as it is currently. They
Okay.
could do that now.
So they
The-
weren't given,
The biggest change came to the multifamily for having the reduction in space. Commercial buildings have always had that ability to shrink their land footprint to go up. However, I mean, if you want some different clarity on that, we can certainly explore the options
I have a
well,
question for you.
where's multifamily?
Real quick.
under residential uses.
We're not changing the 35 feet.
No. Single-family residential
It's always going to be
is
35.
going to be capped out at 35 feet.
So how about a condo or a townhouse development? If they
The-
move closer to the road, they go up 2 more feet?
No, they'd move further away from the road, and they could go up in height. The problem with getting rid of this part is we'd be creating nonconformities throughout the town. Every one of our condo units, almost, with the exception of one, are built like in the
I know,
NB1 districts.
but just so that you know, there has been an effort over the years to keep reducing the height. And it used to be 60 feet in a number of places. and it was changed to 50, and there's been a push to even reduce the 50 back to 35 feet, depending on where it is. My only concern is, if you have 50-foot structures 5 feet from the road in a commercial thing,
That wouldn't happen for them. Like, take the building next door to us. It had to come off the road considerably as well to go up as high as it did. Also to make room for parking. I mean, it's not feasible to just be 5 feet off the property line. They couldn't, I don't know of a property that can make that happen.
look, if nobody else has a problem with it, it's something I've struggled with. I'm willing to go along with this, but I have struggled with it.
And my primary concern is only that while so many other zones allow it, if this is something we want to look at as a whole for the whole town, we probably need to approach every zone individually. Not individually each time, but as a whole. And we're only approaching this one individually at this time.
But this was already on the books for this?
Yes.
Okay, and the only other issue I have is, when you're mixing commercial and residential, I mean, that's what's so difficult. If you've got a bunch of residential buildings on a street, and and this also allows commercial buildings on that same street, the residential have to be, how many feet back did you say from that street?
Single family or multifamily?
Single family.
Single family, will be only 25 feet from the property line.
25 feet back from the street.
But
And a
they-
multifamily?
Can be 25 or up to whatever the go
But
back.
a minimum is 25 feet
Yes.
back and a commercial building?
5 feet.
That's where you run into the problem, when you're mixing commercial and residential
Right.
on a street. And that's what happened. The best example for that is 27th Street on the island, where there's a through lot, and there was an accessory structure built 5 feet from the street, but all the residences on that street are 25 feet back, and it looks terrible. And I think infringes on all those residential, infringes poorly on the residential structures. So how do we handle that situation?
We can always take it back to the drawing board, but there's no perfect way to handle when you're trying to do a mixed-use district. And does
Unless the setback is the setback, period.
True.
So, what are your all thoughts?
But I'd like to remind y'all real
This
quick.
applies to specific parcels that meet the criteria for this MB1 designation.
Right, but I'd also like to remind y'all that the overlay covers some of this. So if you take the commercial business more than 5 feet off the property line, you're going to be in conflict with the way you want to handle parking with the overlay.
Technically, how can they just do 5 feet? They have to have room for parking
Well, the parking would be in the rear.
in the rear.
Sidewalk and landscaping along the front.
I think when you have an undeveloped piece of land and people don't understand how it can be developed, it creates a lot of anger when you get residences up first, and then all of a sudden there's this structure
Right.
at the street, on their street.
But if we make an area that is mixed use financially developable for commercial, non-residential, then we might as well not have it as non-residential. It might as well not be mixed use. You have to make it reasonable for somebody to develop a commercial property in that area, and that's what he's doing with the.
How many
farm.
pieces of property do we have like this?
Excuse me?
How many pieces of property like this?
I couldn't tell you without looking at the zoning map. It's spread out mostly along 904, and then there's portions down towards the bridge, and then there's more portions out on 179.
Yeah,
But
by
it's
the
not just
Regency.
vacant properties.
Right, and it's not just vacant properties. This would constitute for things that want to redevelop as well.
Okay.
And I'd also like to point out, just a point of clarity, that single-family residences wouldn't be allowed on the main roads. They're on secondary roads attached to that district. They wouldn't be on 179, they wouldn't be on 904.
Well, what if you have,
Multifamily could be, but not
the way
single-family.
it was addressed in that island situation is they said if you have a through lot, in other words, commercial structure in the front, but it extends back, that they had to follow, I think we changed the rules. We grandfathered in one building, but the rules were changed so that you had to meet the setback things for the street that your accessory structure was on.
Yeah, there's additional
You couldn't
regulations
go
for
5
through
you
lots
can't
and
go
corner
5
lots.
feet. Just, if you would, just take a look at these things and see whether or not anything like that should be added into this. I'm not saying don't pass this today,
Mm-hmm.
but take a look and see if maybe that's one way of handling a little bit of it in a situation where you know you can have residences on one street that are backing up to commercial property.
What are you suggesting, Carol, going through with this and then?
Yeah.
And then have him come back with a change.
What I'm saying may not be an issue in this area, so.
And I can explore that for all the zones. Make sure that all through lots and corner lots are being handled properly setback
The idea
wise.
is to protect residential
Right.
structures.
All right, any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion one way or another.
Motion, we move that we adopt this ordinance.
Amendment. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's a, there were no nays, so it's effective.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is the smoking areas. I kept that in. We were presented with a proposed ordinance that Councilwoman Scott wanted to address and with a simple language instead.
Okay, I suggest we pull this from the agenda. I was talking to Susan, and most of what they've pulled is something that, you know, is pretty much covered under state law, county law. I don't think we need to get into the business of an entire ordinance on definitions and smoking policies and things like that. They're already banned by the state. But the one thing I wanted to address, which is not covered in this policy, is smoking outdoors, not in a covered area, but smoking outdoors on town property. So I suggested to Susan that we simply, and it's not an employee issue, this has to do with the public on town property. And I suggested that all we need to do is add a sentence to the effect that says, smoking is prohibited on all town property unless in a designated and marked outdoor area. And she's going to look at that and bring that back to us at the next meeting.
All right, so that'll be carried to the next meeting. Next item on the agenda is 6E, the acceptance of the ERC member resignations, discussion concerning ERC. Who wants to handle that? We've received the resignations of each of the members of the Environmental Resource Committee. They need to be accepted if the council's going to accept them.
The only thing I'd like to say, I think this council is handled this project. I think this council has handled this situation horribly, but I will not accept their regularization. I will not accept this, and I think that we've done a bad thing for the town of Sunset Beach by allowing them to be disbanded.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. If I may. Just a little brief statement. To me, this is another sad day for our town. The series of events leading up to the ERC committee's resignations reported by the Beacon has allowed all of us to formulate our own opinions. Among the reported frustrations was the council's 3-2 vote not to accept and provide independent scientific research to members of the scoping meeting, and claiming the ERC report was biased and considered conjecture when we are not scientific experts. This only further creates the appearance that we are biased ourselves. To me, this action again proved when the council is destined to do something, do not interfere with their ultimate goal. Unfortunately, if you do, your efforts and input will be ignored, and your motives or integrity will be questioned. However, don't you dare question ours. As you know, authority never accepts any responsibility. They seem to always circle the wagons and create excuses in order to blame others or discredit others. We seem to be a council that publicly claims we want citizen input as we attempt to project a positive image, but our failure to listen and actions continue to embarrass our town and anger our taxpayers. Mr. Mayor, I accepted the ERC report because I'm not a scientist. However, I cannot accept the ERC's resignations, whose only interest was to educate and to help all of us better understand the environmental consequences of our decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I want to address a couple of things that Councilman Serrato said. Is unless I'm mistaken, there is every report of the ERC has been on the council has put on the website, correct? Correct. The only thing that they didn't do is pass it on, as the ERC requested, to the scoping committee. I said when we discussed this the last time that there's no question that the members of the committee put in a substantial amount of time. They did what they followed what they thought was necessary. That and their time and their effort should be recognized. The major difficulty that I had, and it was just speaking for myself, was that they went in direct contravention of their charge and instruction of what they were not to do by contacting the agencies directly. That's all I really wanted to say with regard to what Mr. Serrato said. The issue we have today is that the charge to the ERC has been changed, and the committee has resigned or has submitted a letter of resignation. And as I expressed before, as individuals, they're perfectly free to do whatever they choose to do, and there's no way we should or can have any control over them. But they are not authorized to, and never were authorized to speak on behalf of the town. But if we, I don't know if it's going to be an issue because I don't know what the vote's going to be. But if the present members, I don't know how we can force a present member to continue to be on a committee if they don't want to be on it.
I'm not forcing anybody to be on
If
it.
you don't accept the resignation.
Well, listen, are you talking to me?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't accept, well, just because you said, I'm not challenging you.
No, Bob.
If the resignations are not accepted, that committee continues with them on that committee.
Bob, I accept the fact that maybe my vote will be symbolic.
Okay, all right, that's fine. And that's fine. You're certainly entitled to do that. That's fine. Any other discussion with regard to it?
A couple points, Mayor. I disagree with quite a bit that Rich said. I do not know how I'm going to vote for dredging because I don't know all of the facts. We've not had the scoping meeting. We've not heard what the various agencies are going to require. There has never been an attempt to not pass on legitimate questions from the ERC or from anybody else, members of council, on through Moffett and Nichols to the scoping committee. A question I have, the document in front of me is the letter that was read at the ERC meeting, which I was present at. I assume we have a document where each of the 5 members of the ERC have signed the resignation?
No, the only thing I have, and it was what you have, the copy of that.
Okay. I guess we need a procedural decision on that. I initially was not a supporter of even having an environmental resource committee. However, after conversations with Councilman Benton on several occasions, I acquiesced and voted yes to establish the committee. I think now it is a good idea to have an environmental resource committee. However, like the mayor commented, it has to be a functioning committee that works within the parameters established for it. Give you an example. If the planning board puts together a suggested amendment to an ordinance and town council doesn't accept it, it doesn't mean that the planning board then has the opportunity, obligation, requirement to go public, and this is a council decision. The planning board works for the council. The Environmental Resource Committee works as advisory to the council. And maybe I'll agree a little bit with what Mark said. It wasn't handled properly. Maybe instructions should have been clearer. This is still a small town. I do believe that the Environmental Resource Committee felt that council was ignoring their position, and that's why they went rogue. That's why they went direct. That was the furthest from the truth. Every one of their legitimate questions is going to be, through Moffett and Nichols, presented to the scoping committee. An agenda item that's coming up later on tonight is who from council will go there to make sure that this in fact happens. I don't know what else further can be said. I'd make a motion that we would accept the nomination, the resignations of the Environmental Resource Committee, but retain the format of the Environmental Resource Committee. It could be of some future benefit.
Any further discussion?
A little bit. I have just a comment. I think I was in the audience when the ERC was established in April 2016. And I think there's been a learning process for the committee, as well as for the council, as well as for the ERC. I think the articulation of the mission was very vague and not particularly well done. There were some adjustments made during the course of the year that sort of clarified that we wanted an identification of issues to be discussed, to be addressed by the scoping committee. There was confusion in terms of how the committee would report, and that was finally resolved when it was directed that the reports would come back to the town council. My point is that however we proceed, whether we keep the framework of the committee in place or not, anytime we provide a tasking to them, we need to make it very clear what their responsibility is, what we want them to do, how we want them to report it, and the relationship with the town council. And I don't think we did that well. Having said all of that, we had 5 members who, both in writing to the council and in public statements, have clearly stated that their intention to resign, and I have no problem with accepting the resignation.
Well said, both of you.
Any other comment? All right, the motion is to accept the resignations of the current members of the Environmental Resource Committee and keep the format of the committee in place, correct?
Future uses.
All right, that's the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
With that in mind, the resignations are accepted, and I charge everybody to think about members to be appointed to the Environmental Resource Committee. Because we now have, I don't know, there was 5 or 6 vacancies. 5, okay. The next item.
Can I add a segue, if you will, on this one? And I'm not sure if that's the right way to do that. The ERC did identify many issues to be addressed. at the scoping meeting, and I prepared and disseminated to the members of the council sort of a summary of what it was, of the issues that have been identified during the course of the year concerning the dredging project. And the memo that I sent included issues, at least 11 of them, that have to be passed on to Moffett and Nichols and to be discussed, make sure that they are adequately discussed during the scoping meeting.
All right, John, if I can cut you short, that really goes into the next agenda item, which was discussion concerning council attendee at the dredging.
Okay, is that the
scoping
next
meeting.
one?
Yeah, that's
Is
the
it
next
that? Okay,
agenda item.
fine.
So
I'll continue then.
you're on for that.
Okay.
Because we're out of the acceptance.
Okay, so we did a segue there. All right. The second aspect of that memo, and it is available up here if you did not get it, is that there's still a number of important steps that need to be taken before the town council is sufficiently informed and in a position to begin to make policy decisions. And these are steps that need to be taken after we get the guidance from the scoping committee on the various issues of what are associated with what can be dredged, what cannot be dredged, and what we're going to do with the spoils, what the costs are. When all of those things are done, and we know what areas are permitted to be dredged and what the costs are involved, then the town council will be in a position to address policy issues as to what areas the town actually wants to dredge and how the town proposes to pay for the dredging, if any area is approved as suitable for dredging. And then the community should play a part in this policy decision process. And so whoever we appoint to go to the scoping meeting, I think we should charge them with making sure that these issues identified are covered and the questions are answered so that we can move on with and make decisions with information based on facts and based on an accurate assessment and knowledge of the situation.
All right, the issue we're talking about is discussion concerning a council attendee for the dredging scoping meetings. My initial reaction is that I don't think that the council member needs to go, should go to I should say my initial reaction was that a council member should not attend the dredging scoping meeting. In view of the suggestion of Councilman Corbett that to make certain that these issues are in fact discussed, I might reconsider that, but it's up to.
I move that we have two people attend the scoping meeting, Pete Larkin and Mark Benton.
Let me make a statement too, because so we're not misleading ourselves. If I go to the scoping meeting, or Mark goes to the scoping meeting, or both of us go to the scoping meeting, we do not have a status at that scoping meeting. What the charge would be is to take this that John has developed, which have questions that have been brought up largely by the Environmental Resource Committee over time, that we are confident that Moffett Nichols is going to properly address them in their interaction and transition back and forth with the scoping, with the various agencies at that scoping meeting. So we're really there not to speak, but to verify.
That's what my understanding would be, because
To observe.
well, not just to observe, but to
No,
if
verify.
verify that these things
Oh, yeah,
were
oh,
discussed.
that's all part of it.
All
I
right, so
don't
I have a motion.
And that's what irks me too, when people, Rich is indicating that we are taking the Environmental Resource Committee's work and shoving it under the rug because it doesn't agree with our predetermined position to go forward with dredging no matter what. And I resent that.
I think we all
Good.
resent that.
Yeah, you can resent it all you want.
John, have you sent that to?
I resent you saying that.
Come on, Rich.
Have you sent that to Moffett and Nichols?
Susan has.
Susan?
And I would envision that, I don't want, the reason I was opposed to it initially was that I don't want three people, addressing the issues on behalf of the town. That's what we're paying the consultant for. But I think that one of the things that changed my mind is that they would give an opportunity to make sure that those items are discussed, not directly by the council person, but through Moffett and Nichols at the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I support Carol Scott's motion to have both Mark Benton and
Pete Larkin.
Pete Lark,
Do we have any other discussion on that
Dr.
motion?
Larkin to the scoping meeting this Friday.
We have
I
any-
think we'd be well represented by both of
all
them.
right, do we have any other discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item is the discussion of the annual report.
As you know, council, the majority of council voted for a 4-page annual report. We've got an 8-page report here. I've had some discussions with, just today, Rich, I'm not trying to, and Pete, I'm not trying to keep you out of the loop, but I had a chance to chat briefly with John this afternoon and with Mark this evening.
Well, you read my comments, though, which
I did read your
I
comments.
put them all down on
Yes,
paper.
Absolutely. I think it is pretty easy to get this into a 4-page format that will satisfy his concerns, my concerns, his concerns, hopefully your concerns, and put in a paragraph at the end, which we said we were going to do, which is both encourage people to sign up for the FOIA list and indicate that that next year that they can expect to see this online, but that's a good reason for them to sign up for email notifications.
Yeah. We also had Mr.
and-
Serrato's concerns,
Pardon?
Mr. Serrato's comments.
Yes, I absolutely took that into consideration.
We
Um,
did your email.
What I propose is that John Corbett, and some of this information can be online. We can let people know that there's an extended version of the annual report online. I would like to meet with John to cut this and redo a couple of sections, give this to you hopefully by the end of the week to look at, and we'll come up with a 4-page document with those things in it. And hopefully everybody will be okay with that.
Any other discussion on it?
Let me be clear. So you're saying in so many words that the 8-page report will be available online in some sort of format?
Yes.
You can add, Pete, an extended version of the report could be online.
I'm planning, for example, to delete in the mailing that one page, which is the leaf and limb schedule or the trash schedule, and say in this thing that schedule is online, and let them know where it is.
All right, let me see what you come up
Same
with.
thing with the concert series, doesn't need to be here. Same thing with donations. Let people know that there's an idea of donations, but the specific people put it online. So we can cut this. A couple of things need to be corrected. Some of your corrections, John had a couple of corrections. Rich had some things, and then give it back to you hopefully by the end of the week.
When does this,
to take a
when
look at.
does this have to be finalized?
Well, there's no date set in stone.
Okay, because the reason I say that is it may not be acted on until June. We may not have, one of the things we're going to discuss is whether we're going to have a meeting another meeting in May.
But we'd still be able to circulate it.
Oh, you can
circulate
circulate it,
and
absolutely.
hopefully we can get approval for this by the June 2nd.
I just want to know what
meeting.
do we
Yeah.
get it done when we need to get it done by?
Yeah, but my only concern is that this is an annual report. It's not a newsletter. And it should be for town business. And that's a philosophical thing, and I understand that. And it may be different from previous annual reports. But to me, it should be strictly town business. And that's my comment. And I think I made that comment.
Okay. Then, anybody have a problem with that procedure? None appearing, we'll go on to the
I
next
didn't see any
item.
Calabash stuff in there, did you?
New business, consideration of the acceptance of the planning board recommendation for UDO amendment Article 9, Performance Standards, Section 9.09, off-street parking requirements, subsection D, minimum number of required spaces.
Geez, you're a busy guy, huh?
It's me again. Hi. The planning board at its last meeting did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this amendment. This is for a section 9.09 off-street parking schedule to basically island parking being an issue, started this up, but carry-out restaurants or places with fewer than 5 seats, trying to take the approach of 1 space per 200 square feet of retail space, as opposed to our typical restaurant seating of 1 space per 50 square feet, or 1 per 3 seats, whichever is greater. This is to help accommodate smaller sized business locations that already have been built out.
All right, Hiram, I don't mean to cut you off. We've talked about this before, haven't we? We've all reviewed it. Anybody have any questions on Hiram about it?
This is actually a new concept. We have not really talked about it. Planning board
Yeah, we talked about
raised this. Very
Right.
briefly, but it's not come before council. The only question I have is, if we do this, and a business comes in and builds a building, you know, we're a structure and says, okay, I'm gonna be, doing carry-out things, and I only need 3 parking spots, and the use of that building changes in the future.
They'd have to
to
update their
something
parking.
else.
Per our ordinances, they'd have to update their
How,
parking.
but how do you control
I
that?
thought that we didn't have that in our ordinance.
The way I've been interpreting the ordinances, if you don't have the parking space allowable, you can't move into that area, which is causing the problem for.
But how do
No.
you, without a requirement for a certificate of continuing occupancy or a new occupancy certificate, how do you monitor, it? How do you control it?
Well,
You
I
don't.
understand how things have been done before, but technically speaking, if it's in the use table, it's supposed to get a zoning permit before it goes into a location. So they have to get.
No, a building's been built.
Well, I understand,
and
but what
they're
I'm saying is
operating.
a
5
new
years
business
down the road, they go out of business, and that building is now gonna be used.
by something
for
else.
Something else.
And something else has to come in and talk to us in order to use it.
I'm
I
not positive that
agree
our
with-
rules have that in
I
there.
agree with you that if a use permit would substitute for what I'm familiar with is a certificate of continuing occupancy.
Right.
It'd do the same thing.
Same difference for us. And yes, if it's in the use table, it's required to have a zoning permit. Anything that's erected or used or constructed or change of use has to get a zoning permit.
If it's
Whether
in
that's
there-
been in practice or not, I can't.
Well, if it's in there, we can
state.
enforce it. That's what we need.
Right.
Okay.
But, we're requesting just the public hearing
Would
be
you
set for June 5th.
double check that, please?
All right, let's
And
set
let's schedule, let's.
the public
I
hearing
move we
for,
schedule a public hearing on, parking requirements, for small carry-out takeout restaurants for June. What's the date of our June meeting?
Oh, no, I was looking
June
for my
5th.
phone so I could look up. the
June
ordinance.
5.
June 5th. And in the interim, would you please ensure that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've got no problem with that. I believe, I can't remember the section off the top of my head, but I'll look it up here in a
All
second
those in
for you.
favor of scheduling it for a June hearing?
Aye.
Opposed? 7B, consideration of acceptance of planning board recommendation for UDO amendment, Article 6 zoning districts, table of permitted special uses, Article 7 supplemental regulations regarding privacy fences.
One question on that, I'm sorry.
No worries.
You're encouraging living fences, which should be installed to a minimum depth of 5 feet and such that 75% visual opacity within 1 year is attained. But that's in the same thing about fences or walls shall not restrict the ground level view of any adjacent property, shall not exceed 4 feet in height, shall be at least 50% transparent.
No,
So what happens if somebody says, okay, I'm not gonna put in a fence in my yard, I'm not gonna do a fence, I'm gonna do a living fence, and that living fence winds up obstructing a view?
the living fence is under the non-residential. It's meant to be a buffer between residential uses and commercial uses. The only thing about the preventing view of amenities, so to speak, is under residential.
Well, I'm reading non-residential, C, and
C.
then 1, fences shall be uniform in design. 2, fences shall not restrict the ground level view of adjacent property. Okay, so it's in the same section.
Facing the ocean, waterway, marsh, lakes, or golf course.
Okay, but that conflicts with number 4 on living fences.
But they wouldn't be able to install a living fence if they're next to a golf course. However, behind town hall here, we'd be able to.
if you've got a property and you're on the waterway and you want to put up, what's going to prevent you from putting up a living fence?
Non-residential.
It's a non-residential use, not a residential use. It wouldn't be allowed under residential.
Number 2 is under non-residential,
That's right, living fences are under non-residential.
and so is number 2 on this. I'm not reading C, 1, 2, 3, and 4. C is non-residential.
I don't know how to respond to that because I don't know of a commercial business that's on the golf course.
We're not,
Well, there is,
Under 2, it says fences or walls shall not be restricted the ground level view of any adjacent property facing the ocean, waterway, marsh, lakes, or golf course. There's specific criteria that, you'd have to have some type of ability to see through.
so how about if we just add for number 4, except as provided, except as required under number 2, living fences are encouraged.
After the public hearing, or would you like to send it back to the planning board?
No, we can do it, I guess, at the public hearing, but do you understand what I'm?
Oh, I understand what you're saying,
think
but
these two things conflict.
I understand what you're saying. We'll make the changes after the public hearing if y'all want to vote that way.
After is good.
all right, let's have a motion to set this for a public hearing for June 5. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have another one before reviewing the upcoming agenda items, was the, well, actually, there's 2 things. One is discussion on
We have uncounted properties.
code enforcement of conditions, property conditions.
There are a number of legal problems with sending people onto somebody's private property. There are legal restrictions involved, but other than that, I don't know that our own code gives us all the tools that we could have to have a successful code enforcement
I've
program.
asked Hiram to come up here because I made him aware of your concerns so he can actually speak to
Okay.
some of your questions.
And you're correct about that. But when we're talking code enforcement, there's a huge realm. There's nuisance abatement covered by our town ordinances. There's building code enforcement, which is covered by North Carolina law. There's UDO enforcement, which is covered by our UDO. And then there's minimum housing and unsafe structures. And those are optional ordinances that did not make it into the UDO for some reason, I don't know.
So all I'm asking
Well,
is that you're charged with going back and saying what we need to make sure we can take care of the problem properties in our town.
And I'd like to just remind y'all at our budget meeting, Mr. White and I both discussed our proactive stance on code enforcement coming up. One of those is updating the ordinances for those things that did get left out. I would, however, are we talking specifically minimum housing? Or are we talking, because like I said, there's other types of code enforcement that we can already do. What I want to know is specifically, are we talking like yards, or are we talking about structures?
We're talking about debris left in yards,
Which we
yards
can
not
handle
being
currently,
mowed,
and we can
you
handle
know,
currently.
roofs falling down, structures being
Would need to be put in.
uninhabited.
Chickens in
and
the
being-
backyard.
Becoming uninhabitable.
Researching
Chickens
why
are
that got
covered
dropped
by
a few years
specific
ago.
ordinance.
Then you run into
We don't,
issues
we don't
with-
allow them.
Then you run into issues with public safety, so.
Well, like I said, with the building and structure, the unsafe building and the minimum housing, we're looking at ways of making an Article 14 for the UDO to cover
We've
that.
gotten a lot of complaints. I've gotten calls, I'm sure you guys have gotten calls too.
And we
People are
have,
unhappy about some structures in Sunset Beach. I just want to make sure we have everything in our tool belt to allow us to address those concerns.
and we've gotten those same concerns as well. I would, however, like to remind y'all when it comes to appearance, like a lot of the concerns I've gotten have been like painting and
Right.
upkeep. We can't cover that. But we are in the process of trying to redevelop what used to be only an unsafe building clause in our ordinances. I don't know why it got taken out, but we're putting that back in for commercial structures, and we're looking at putting in a minimum housing standard that
Residential.
for residential.
Whatever
So,
we can legally do.
right, and
We'd like to be able to do everything we can legally do to take care of the problem.
I understand, and Carrie and I've been, Mr. White and I've been talking about that extensively since I got here. It's just, that's not a overnight quick right when you're talking
The
private
sooner we
property
start,
rights.
The better off we are.
But we are working on the overgrown lots. I've got 3 in the process. I've got to write letters for this week. Chickens and other things are,
Chickens, we have an ordinance in.
right, but there's a yard with chickens, so there's a, There's a few things that we are looking at that we can do. It's just, it's a process to make sure that we're doing everything correct.
Chickens, you know, I've been reading in the paper, and I don't remember where it is, but somebody, oh, no, it was, no, it was up north. No, it's not here. Up north, they wanted to allow no more than like 6 chickens in the backyard. And it wasn't here, it was up north. Okay, do you have enough direction to do what you need?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to reiterate that we're planning on coming to y'all sometime in the summer after taking it to the planning board for those changes to the UDO as a whole.
We've passed so many of the planning board's things, that we need to give them some work.
Oh, yeah. We need more work, please.
Okay, the next,
Be careful what you ask for, Hiram.
the next,
No, I'm sorry.
the next item that we, I don't know that we need to resolve it today, but the discussion on the position on offshore drilling. I raised it because I was asked to speak at the event that was originally scheduled for Wednesday, that's not going to be scheduled for Friday. Quite frankly, I didn't know what to say except something personally. I can't do it Friday because I'm not going to be here, but.
I would suggest we do what Rich was talking about, is we reauthor the same resolution if we can.
It's a good resolution.
If we can if we can get our hands on the hard copy of the resolution, somebody can read it
Well,
as a passed resolution.
then we can do that. We can put that on the agenda for June 5th. But in the meantime,
I'd like to see us reiterate that.
I can't go to the, what does the council feel? I can't go to this event on Friday.
Bob, what I can
Mark and
do-
I can't go, we're in
Yeah.
scoping meeting.
I can't go.
Bob, what I can do is, I think there's a Pelican Award plaque somewhere on the wall of Town Hall for the... Yeah, okay. What I can do is pick it up and just bring it to the meeting on Friday to show them that we...
But in addition to the meeting, forget the meeting on Friday for a minute. What we need to do is, in view of what's happening at the national level, is we should
Well, we're going to do that.
submit.
We
We already
plan on
said we were
doing
gonna
that.
do
We're gonna
that.
do
They're
that.
gonna
We've already
find
been
the
given
old one, we're gonna
direction to do
resubmit it.
that.
It will be on the agenda for.
All right.
Carol, if the
June 5th.
mayor can't make it, as mayor pro tem, can you go in his absence on Friday?
I don't know that I would be a welcome presence. I'm sorry.
I was surprised. I didn't
Oh,
know
I didn't hear
would be
that.
welcome either.
So, yeah, Susan, what I'll do is I'll come by Town Hall and steal the
But I'm
plaque.
not sure that there should be a council presence in this anyway. I don't think we should
Well,
be getting into the business.
We have to be careful politically as to what
invited,
we
Carol.
I don't
discuss.
think
We
we should
can
be
read
getting
the
into
resolution,
business
and
when
that's it.
somebody decides to call, a press conference, or whatever they're doing. This is not council business, is all I'm suggesting.
Well, we were
So-
invited.
But we can, if we limit it to reading the resolution that was previously passed, that was council business. But
And
then put a
that's fine.
period, but then put a period there and not editorialize.
Hear that, Rich?
I have to read the resolution?
Right.
That
Just
And
the
stop
resolution.
Just the resolution.
You trust me?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Jinx Creek has never been dredged. You're stubborn like me.
He's gonna start off that way.
Public comment. Bob.
Okay, we talk about future agenda items?
the information that the ERC provided.
Oh, well, let's talk about the May, let's talk about whether or
Yeah,
not
we
we
need-
should cancel the work
well-
session for May 20th.
We have,
There's 2 agenda items.
we needed to, for what's going to be on the next agenda, and whether we need it, Peter's not going to be available for the May
16th.
16th meeting. And is somebody else not going to be available?
I
Is-
make a motion that we just not meet that time.
I like that
Discussion?
idea.
All those in-
That
all
we
those in
cancel
favor?
Let-
the-
let's ask Susan
we
what she
cancel the
thinks.
council meeting for May
16th of May.
20th?
Oh, that's fine.
Is that the date, May 20th? We canceled the May 20th
It's-
council meeting.
No, it's May
May
16th.
It's May
16th council
16th.
meeting.
All right, all those in favor?
And bear in mind that we've had, how many budget meetings now?
Then,
3, 4?
This is the job we selected.
all right, then, that's everything on our agenda beside the public comments, correct? Okay. Meeting, I entertain a motion, open the meeting for public comments. Have a motion? All those in
So
favor?
moved. We have to
Yes.
Okay. Karen?
Karen Joseph, this is 915 Sandpiper Bay Drive. Unfortunately, none of this is going to be positive. Mr. Larkin pointed out, if I understood correctly, that as council members, you have no status at the scoping meeting. I presume that the town administrator will be attending the scoping meeting as part of her job. Somebody stated that Moffett Nichols already have been given the ERC concerns and been told to address them. I've heard that at numerous council meetings. They have been instructed to address those issues with the various state agencies. If you have no status at the scoping meeting, at most meetings, that means you can't speak. I think sending two of you, no less, really undermines our town administrator again. As far as the annual report, some of you with whom, well, I served with Carol, know that my feelings about the annual report are very strong. This council talks about transparency and communicating with the taxpayers. We have thousands of taxpayers who are not on our website, no matter how hard the town has tried in the past to get them on the website. They're not going to get on the website. They're not going to sign up for the emails just because of human nature and their ages. The annual report, yes, as much as some of you don't like it, is a public relations tool. That's why they were invented. That's why companies and towns use them. I would urge you to just put in any town that you're aware of, whether it be here in North Carolina or where you originally came from. Look at their annual reports. Some of them are going to be 30 pages because they share information with their taxpayers. I think this is a mistake, but I've said that before. And now I'm going to give you an assignment. This is the former teacher in me. I'm going to ask you all, at some point, not tonight, God knows, to go on YouTube and watch a meeting. Because you think, I've said this before, you think you're talking into the microphone. You're not. And when you go on YouTube as a good citizen, we can't hear you. Carol, you think you're talking into the microphone. You're not. So I'm trying to give you a little hint so you look good, because I've had a number of people that I have encouraged to go on YouTube, and they've said to me the next day, "What are you, nuts? I can't hear them." So I'm just a little friendly advice.
So your point is, sound good, look good, we really can't fix that.
Hey, you know, the look good is a personal issue. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Mr. Hearn.
Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. When I made my previous comments, the one thing I was going to cover was the issue of conflict of interest. And my comments are going to be, you pay a lawyer for his advice, you need to follow the advice, whether you personally agree with it or not. Now, when Grady explained everything to me, it brought something else to mind. I lived in Fairfax City, Virginia. That town council was so explicit in following the rules till they were squeaky clean and so squeaky clean that they squeaked. And if there was any connection with what one of those city councilmen was going to discuss, during that discussion, they recused themselves and got up and left the room. I assumed that that was Virginia law. What Grady was talking about was North Carolina law. Last year, the issue of the Pierhead alignment came up, and it was my suggestion that Carol Scott should recuse herself. I was wrong. I apologize. Sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narron. Any other public comments?
feel any better, I don't have a property that's affected by that.
Any other comments? Entertain we close the public comment portion. All those in favor? Aye. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.